You can do 400 pieces of content in 3 hours. But at the end of the day, that is not your best. This process of writing a book it's irreplaceable with any sort of social media.
Good books are the best of a person, a culture, an idea. Reading a book is like spending time with another person. It is somebody's masterclass.
We're in a world that moves so fast. I was a content machine for a while, and this process of writing a book, it's just a complete and total boot camp on personal transformation.
You can absolutely write a book in 45 minutes on AI. The quality is going to match the effort that went in. That's just the reality of it.
What's the most surprising truth about success that nobody talks about? Okay, so I have my really amazing friend Sierra Melcher with me. She's not only a friend, but she's been a client for a long time now. So Sierra, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks.
Awesome. Happy to see you. Look at that big smile. I love it. Well, nobody knows who you are on this show, even though you're very popular in the world, as we know. Maybe you can just give a quick introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Sierra Melcher. I am the founder of Red Thread Publishing. We are on a mission to get more voices into the world, the silenced voices, and help people write and publish impactful nonfiction. I'm a lot of other things, but that's what I'm going to go with for now.
I love it. I'm sure we're going to dive into all those things that you are. You know me, I like to dig under the layers and pull it all back.
You do.
Yeah, I honestly just want to start with something that was really important to me is, I feel like we're in a bit of a crisis today with masculinity, but I think that masculinity is the foundation of female voices personally, and we'll talk about that later. But you're really big on female voices and impact, and I know that your main imprint is primarily female voices. And I was just curious, your opinion on women's voices maybe as a catalyst for global change and why it's such a mission for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that question or that prompt. As you mentioned, we started as an all-female imprint. We have multiple imprints, meaning we just have different companies with different focuses. For those who aren't up on the publishing lingo, we started as an all-female publishing company 5 years ago with the intention of creating a space where women could find their own voices and then share their voices, because those voices had been left out of the bigger conversation for a really long time. And it's not because I think those voices are more important. I just noticed the lack of and wanted to bring a little bit more balance and integration so that women could hear women's voices, so that men could hear women's voices, so that anyone on any spectrum could be opened to a newer part of the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go right in because you know how I am.
Okay.
I think we've seen quite a shift in the pendulum, and I think women's voices are being more heard now than ever. And it's actually shifting to a point where I know we were doing this men's health book together, and we've noticed that the men's voices are starting to silence a bit now too. I'm curious your thoughts on that, pushing so far forward with the women and then saying, hey, you know what, maybe some of these people are getting left behind. And the reason why I want to bring that up is because there's this mindset or ideology that if we help this group of people, we can't help those people. And I think what happens is if we don't have the idea of rising tides raise all boats, that's the proper way to say that, I think people get left behind. And I think that it hurts everyone if we're not all moving forward together. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I want to pick apart something that you just said. Saying men's voices or women's voices is a really broad statement, right? Men's voices on certain topics like mental health or, et cetera. To say men's voices are being silenced I'm not on board with that statement as a broad stroke. But what men feel like they can talk about openly and comfortably, I think is limited, right? And so I've been looking at this, stepping back a little bit, and I'm thrilled that women have taken more of a role in conversations, in writing and publishing, and are finding a space where they can hold their own. This is amazing. This is what feels like progress. It is never meant to come at the cost of someone else. That's not how it's going to work. But I've always seen it where I've just been watching trends for about 15 years. There was a wave where women needed to go off on their own to really to make some discoveries, but we're not supposed to be moving away from one another. But I do think that pulling back a little bit or pulling into oneself or pulling into one's own group served a function so that we can come back together. And I think it's okay for us to move away from like this, but inevitably, we're not going to thrive out here. We're going to thrive when we come back with more information, with more clarity, confidence, skill, acceptance, and we can come back and work together. And so, if that's catching people up on some of the conversations you and I've had over the last year, uh,
For sure.
it's definitely not like men's groups and women's groups, not so that we can be apart, but so that we can come together.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that men have fallen behind in that space and they're starting to catch up a little bit. And I think part of it was because the boys club was kind of shut down for a little while. And I think that we need the boys club, we need the women's club, we need those separate spaces to kind of find our own. We're just different, right? We're unique. And I think that in order for us to have that cohesive unit, we have to go off on our own as men, go off on our own as women, and come back together as a team. And I think that we've talked about this so much. And I even look at therapy because I work with so many clients that obviously are in relationships. And I'm like, it's so powerful to have your own therapist, each of you, and then to come together and work on things together. Because when you really look at it, like none of those models work that don't have balance. And I think that Simon Sinek I reposted something of his yesterday, and it was just the idea that it's not one way or the other much. It's like this pendulum swing, right? It's like, I love the dichotomy of everything and those pendulums do swing, but you and I are of an age now where we've actually seen multiple patterns and lived through them. And you kind of start to see the writing on the wall and going, yeah, this is a much better direction. And I think, I'm curious to kind of shift this conversation a little bit back to writing is going through these patterns and seeing the shifts and seeing the pendulum swings of writing and publishing. Like, what is your thoughts in general as far as books as a whole functioning as this maybe vehicle of society? Like, as people's voices get expressed, as people be able to come together, as they be able to share, because it's starting to feel a bit like a lost art in some ways with so much social media. And for me, it's something that I don't know. I think it's got a very special place, not just in history, but in the future. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so many different things come up. One is it's the things that make us different that are going to bring us together, not all being the same, right? But in order for that to work, we need to be exposed to things that are different than who we are or who we think we are so that we can grow and evolve. And that's how I'm going to link our two conversations, right? Reading a book, and I was reading something this morning, is like spending time with another person. You are getting to insert yourself in their perspective, in their experience. And it's a person that mostly likely you will never get to sit down with for 3 to 10 hours. But a book is, and it's also not just shooting the shit for 10 hours. It is ideally and usually a concentration, digested. It's like the best parts of that person's lived and learned experience over 5, 10, 30, 50 years, squeezed into a couple of pages or a couple of hours. It's not just like eavesdropping at the coffee shop, the conversation, bitching and moaning that's happening next to you. It is somebody's masterclass, right? How else are we going to get the best? How else are we going to be able to, we have a limited time in this life. There's only a certain number of hours, a certain number of days that you get, and then it's over. How do you want to spend that time? Who do you want to expose yourself to? Who do you want to learn from? Do you want to make the most out of it, or do you want to just sort of waste it? You bring up an interesting point with social media, and I think now we absolutely have to talk about AI as well. There's this just sort of, I feel like it's everything that's ever been said dumped into a blender, and then we're like getting a slushy of that. And if you're writing a book using that exclusively or largely, then it's, yeah, there's stuff in there, but it's not letting, I mean, let's think about letting the cream rise to the top or letting um, a good whiskey age. Okay. It gets better with time and it gets better with discernment. And I love books because they're our best. Good books are the best of a person, a culture, an idea. And not only do I love reading books and helping people create books, I love the transformation of a person who has this idea, and you're going through it right now. You have this lived and learned experience, but it has not yet been extracted from you, where you become, and the transformation for you from idea generator, writer to author. Because I think these things go hand in hand. And we can't just talk about books from the perspective of the reader. It's powerful and it's important, but there's also this perspective of how you are going to change and how the way you're going to show up is going to be significantly different as you go through this transformation. So it's all of it. I love all of it.
Going through the process, just writing that chapter for the men's health book we did and writing this book that I'm writing right now, it's really brought up something in my mind that we're in a world that moves so fast, and you are like, here, you can do 400 pieces of content in 3 hours, or you can, and I mean, I was a content machine for a while, as you know, right? And it's really helpful to get out there. Like every coach will tell you, and I coach this because I coached online marketing for years, is just get out there and make content, get out there and make content. Absolutely, for the practice, to refine, to nurture. But at the end of the day, that is not your best. The effort it takes to slow down, and let's be honest, it takes probably a good year for a brand new writer to write a book. I know it can happen faster, but I really believe just and maybe sometimes 10 years, right? Because it's been in there forever. And I think that slowing down is something that AI can't do. It's a different thing. And, I look at as society as we are still human beings, no matter what we want to do. And there's certain parts of our DNA that you just can't take away, needs that we need, nurturing that we need, connection to the earth, to each other. And this process of writing a book it's irreplaceable with any sort of social media, any sort of YouTube long form. It's a very in-depth internal process. And, it's like the old saying, good things come to those who wait, or like anything worth doing is hard and takes time. And I think that was the part for me that was so like, it's a complete and total boot camp on personal transformation as you write this damn thing. So yeah, I just wanted to stress that. I don't know if you have anything to add to it, but I think that was really powerful.
I agree. I think part of what makes books great is the heart that goes into them. That's not to say wait 30 more years because it'll be that much better. That's not what I'm going for. What I mean though is you can absolutely write a book, air quotes, in 45 minutes on AI, and it's going to match the quality. The quality is going to match the effort that went in. That's just the reality of it. I talk to people all the time and I say, how long have you wanted to write a book? And it's very often 10, 5, 20 years. And so there's a couple things that I always want to discern is, have you been writing the book for 10 years, or have you been learning the lessons that you needed to learn in order to write the book for 10 years? Writing a book for 10 years sounds like a terrible idea to me. Who was Mark 10 years ago? That dude and this dude couldn't sit down at a table and work together probably on anything, right? And so don't write a book over that amount of time. You will change so significantly that you will constantly contradict yourself. But living those lessons, everything that you've won, lost, learned is going to go into the book that you're working on now. When you write another book 10 years from now, it's going to be a different book, different perspective, because you will have learned and grown.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I was thinking, I heard a saying one time and it really stuck with me. It said, hard writing makes easy reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved that. And you think you can just throw it down on paper, but you can't. Like it takes time. And, there's this kind of I think it was Rachel Hollis. I think I've told you this story. I was at an event. I think it was a Brenda Bouchard event. And I think Lewis Howes was there and all these people. And everyone's like, you're so awesome. Like, how was your first book? Like, you're so successful. And she's like, it's actually my fifth. And the idea of this myth of overnight success in publishing and in entrepreneurship, as you know very well, because you've been an entrepreneur now for over a decade. I'm just curious if you could share with the audience, like you've worked with so many authors. What's the most surprising truth about success that nobody talks about, that you don't get in the highlight reels? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that this is where our conversation's going, because it's come up very poignantly for me this week. This week is an 18th anniversary, a 16th anniversary, and a anniversary, a 2-year anniversary. So many things have happened to me this week, year after year. Moving to China, moving to Colombia, finishing my yoga teacher training, discovering that I was pregnant, writing a book, doing my first sort of global speaking tour from Las Vegas to New York City. And in each of those moments, I was looking forward and all the things I hadn't yet done. But this week, I'm looking backwards at all the things, and it's making me dizzy, honestly. It's super surreal to look and be like, look at that cute girl. Like she had no idea who she was becoming or what she was capable of, or just like it's stunning to me. 6 years ago, okay. Is 6 years ago a long time ago? Yes. No. It is when you're looking forward. It's a long time. 6 years from now is like 6 years ago was just a minute ago. But 6 years ago, I had not opened my publishing company. 6 years ago, I hadn't published my first book. It'd been published once, but I hadn't written my own book yet. I was still baby. I drafted a book, but I hadn't published a book. And I was like right at that precipice of everything that came after. And when I'm working with someone, and if I tell them 6 years from now, you will be, how does that feel? You're like, no, I want it now. I want it yesterday. I want it 6 years ago. But what I'm realizing is 5 years is nothing. It's a blink. And you and I have talked about this, and I want to share this here is I know I was that person, but no part of me recognizes her at all. The person who was audacious enough to believe she could open a publishing company. Amazing. Love her. Super grateful for that ridiculous intention. But everything else, it was so small. It was so ignorant. I mean, I just want to like hug her and like sit her down and give her a couple of tips. But I see what's happened because of continuous, I guess, audacious moves between then and now. And it's really helpful to look at the next 5 years with this awareness of how far I've come. So it's not going to be, here's where I was, here's where I am. 5 years from now is not a continuation of that same curve. 5 years from now is a continue, like it's unimaginable at this point, but I know it. And so if I can condense all of that into just like a nugget that you can sort of suck on, you cannot possibly imagine where you're going and who you're going to become. But all you do, like all I've done is just throw down every day. So throw down every day without the the worrying about where it's going to get you so much because it's going to get you there faster and further than you can imagine now. That's it, right? You're going to end up in a place that you can't even imagine today. I know I am. I know. And I've gotten better at imagining, but it's still going to be different than that.
I have this saying and it says like basically everything is working out for me better than I could have ever hoped for or imagined. And I think that if I could give any wisdom to younger people or anybody actually for that matter is just like you said, is that idea of just it's piece by piece, step by step, little tiny details. And I think with all of that comes grace, like really learning to give yourself grace, to be kind. And I'm huge on accountability and structure, and you've got to kick yourself in the ass sometimes. But if you don't give yourself grace over those periods of time, it becomes hard to do those little micro movements that are necessary to get to where you want to go. And I find something really unique. We're similar age. And I feel like for me, I have 10 times the amount of time at 45 to 55 than from 25 to 35. It's crazy. And obviously I have 20 less years, to live. Well, it depends. We'll see what AI comes up with. But the point is that it's wild how this phase is such a different mindset and how you slow down so much and you realize, like you said, you have no idea what the future is going to bring you, what's possible. I mean, look at how much my life has changed in a year. You've known me. It's crazy what I've experienced, and I just have no idea what the next year is going to bring. So I agree completely. I do have a question for you though, for the audiences. This is kind of your expertise, right? You've lived all over the world. You've gone through crazy, chaotic times. In that space, what I've experienced personally when I went through all the hardships with all my losses in the last year was, if being a sommelier, right? Like you could throw me into a room and I could sell wine all night and sling it and do whatever. No big deal. But to create, it's fucking hard when you're broken, when you're frozen, when life is kind of chaotic in general. It doesn't even have to be that bad. Like, my last year was pretty rough. But like creativity in the midst of chaos. I'm curious if you have any ideas on that, how to protect your creativity when life feels messy.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. And I think the answer is the opposite of what we are trained to expect. We learn that success comes through hustle and more. And some of it does, right? You want to go sell another bottle of wine, you have to go sell another bottle of wine. But if you want to get inspired to make a new recipe with wine, it's not through hustle. The last book I put out addresses this a bit. It's Typo, The Art of Imperfect Creation, Permission to Do It Badly. And the book that I'm working on right now is especially about this because one of the things that I learned and brought into the publishing process from the very beginning is this cyclical nature of creation. And creation doesn't just come from hustle and grind. That is a part of it. But if you look at the seasons and you look at the phases of the moon and you look at everything that's ever come about, there's 4 parts to it. And this is where, going back to what you said, writing a book over 10 years, are you writing for 10 years or are you working on different parts of the process for 10 years? Right? One of the things they say is 80% of writing is not writing. And I completely agree with that because there's the dreaming and ideation, there's planning, there's actual put pen to paper, get the shit done, and then there's revision. And you must go through all of these phases, ideally a few times, to get to a final product. It's true with anything. It's true with cooking. It's true in relationships. It's true in business. It's true with everything. Michelin star chefs don't just like throw together a recipe. How many times have they done a thing? The 10,000-hour rule. We are not going to just create brilliance all at once. It comes through rest, introspection, revision, reflection. All of these things are really valuable parts of the process. And the word writing actually, I think, short circuits our brain. We're like, oh, I'm going to sit down and write. You're not. You're going to sit down and draft. Draft acknowledges that it's not going to be great the first time. And this is why I wrote this book, is because we go into writing thinking it's going to be good. And then we're shocked that it's not good. It's not as good as anything you've ever read because everything you've ever read is somebody's final draft. You're comparing an early draft to somebody else's final draft. You're different people, and your shitty first draft is exactly that. But you've got to learn to iterate and rest and reflect and find new inspiration and repeat. And that, I think what holds so many people back is that they still are putting their story into a line. I'm going to decide to write a book, and then I'm going to write a book, and then I'm going to publish a book, and then it's going to be amazing. And Oprah's going to call. And when any part of that story brings conflict or tension or obstacles, we're like, oh, well, I guess I'm not a writer. Oh, I'm not meant to do this, oh, that. BS, because it's a circle, it's a spiral. I'm going to draft, I'm going to learn, I'm going to improve. I'll get there eventually. And if you come at this process with that understanding, I'm going to take a nap. That's me working on my book. I'm going to take a hike. That's me working on my book. I am going to ask for help. That's me working on my book. And then I'm going to actually sit down and write a paragraph. And that's me working on my book. That single shift in awareness has changed everything about how I write, how I run my business, how I parent, how I coach my authors to write, how I coach my authors to then go get speaking gigs and podcasts and everything that comes after. I say this anytime somebody asks, because the first time I published a book, I went to bed disappointed. Somewhere along the line, I really thought all I had to do was write a good book, publish it, and Oprah would call me, and she didn't. Right? But I had this warped sense of what was involved and what the results would be. But when I look at it from this spiral, I'm like, oh, good. All I got to do is show up in this process again and again and again. And it's an ever expanding reality. So that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, and I'll add my piece to that because I agree 1,000%. And I think a big part is that balance that you're talking about. That I love to talk about the masculine, feminine, and I think one thing is if we're talking about just creativity as a whole, just like let's just single that out. It just doesn't ever happen in the grind, at least for me. Right? It happens when I'm walking on a beach. It happens when I'm completely distracted on an airplane or when and it's in those moments of what I consider dropping into the feminine and being connected and getting the download. I think that's so important. And then I think, speaking of the spiral, this isn't a straight shot. They talk about, it's like this, right? So how do we maintain that for long periods of time? And the answer is balance. The answer is allowing yourself to rest and drop into the feminine and find space. And I think that space is so overrated. And one thing, I love and hate about Medellin is it's much slower than the United States. And it's really taught me to slow down and to value joy and to be at peace just in day to day life for absolutely no reason. It's almost like you have to earn your peace and your joy and your happiness in the States, as you know. And me and you are still very much built that way. And I don't dislike the way I'm built. I actually really do like it. I'd rather learn to slow down because it's really hard to teach. It's like, they say you can boil a spaghetti soft, but you can't make it hard. So I'd rather be the hard spaghetti, boil me down a little bit. And it's just funny because another piece that I want to share with everyone is, and I love this saying, is everybody wants to be the hero, but nobody wants to go through the hero's journey. And I can tell you this right now, great books, great story. Like, how many crazy stories I have and all the things I've been through. A lot of them were extremely painful. I mean, like the depth of darkness that I went through was beyond challenging. And that makes great stories. That makes people be like, wow, when you read David Goggins, you love him so much. If you love him, maybe you hate him, but you at least respect him because you're like, holy shit, that guy went through that. Like, it's the human spirit that we admire, and the human spirit, it's adversity that really puts us on that pinnacle. And I think that that's so important to understand that piece and understand that your creativity sometimes is your chaos. And that's what's going to bring it all out. And understanding that masculine feminine balance is huge. So I really appreciate you touching on that because I feel like you're the expert in that space. And speaking of you being the expert in this space, I've watched the marketing boom just shift dramatically. And everybody is an influencer now, and everybody's a coach now, and everybody's at least speaking some positive affirmations online. And so, with that being said, the whole business of everything has changed. And so, you can't just be this. You can't just be a realtor anymore. You got to be an influencer, right? But books are very, very, very powerful. And they used to just primarily be a product, but now they're becoming a business, and people are using the books as credibility, criteria, clout to build a business. So maybe you could speak on the idea for anybody who's even considering writing a book, how it's really much more than a product. A book is actually a business.
So much more. Yeah. And that it requires a shift in thinking. Okay. Because a book is a thing, it's a physical commodity, and you can buy it. But that's not, and I can make $2.28 from a book. Great. But that's not the function of a book. It's not a product to sell because it is the coalescing of ideas, and it does one thing for the reader. It gives them it's a tool for them to learn and grow. Red Thread's called Red Thread because a book is actually this connection that exists between the author and the reader. Every single person, when I read a book, and I love Audible, so I'm always listening to authors narrate their own stories. I'm not just consuming a product or you filling 2 hours of my day. I'm in an intimate connection with that person. And what that does for me as the consumer is it elevates me. What it does for the author is it elevates them and it brings us closer. Am I more likely to attend a conference with this person, buy a product from this person, hire this person as my coach? Anything that they offer, I am more likely to participate in, unless they're a total wanker and I learned that I hate them from their book, then, but I'm moved closer to this person in every way possible. In a world where everybody's an influencer and everybody's an expert in whatever they do, supposedly. And I have the choice between two people. I'm going to choose the person that has a book because it's still a rarefied form of expertise. I subconsciously value that person's perspective more than the person who didn't go through the struggle to get a book into the world. I don't care if you have 1 million hours on YouTube. 10,000 followers on, I mean, 10 million followers on Instagram. I don't care. If you didn't take the time to coalesce your ideas for me into book form, I'm going to go with the person who has a book. Either I'm going to buy the book and have that validate my belief in them, or I'm just going to leapfrog over the book and trust that person because they wrote the damn book. Books are old school. They are old school technology, right? There was a moment in history when it was the cat's meow, like the printing press, and it changed everything. It's still changing everything. And of all the mediums I could support people in sharing their ideas, books to me are still the coolest thing. Yes, you should probably have YouTube, and yes, you should be on podcasts, and you should do all the other things as well, but nothing beats a book. It doesn't.
Yeah, it makes a phenomenal addition to a digital funnel. I mean, I even studied a program. I think I spent $30,000 on that mastermind, and it was and really it was a book funnel. That was kind of the majority of what they taught, and then it led to a Facebook group. But one thing too is, it's I think the quality of the book will be the determining factor, and the people that read it, they will be changed. And yeah, I think anybody could put out a book right now. There are people putting out 10 books a day or something like that I saw, and I'm just like, okay, exactly. And there's no depth there, but I think if you really put your heart and soul into something. Now, I remember one time an expert copywriter told me, he's like, Mark, when somebody really cares, because everyone's just going to blow by your stuff. They don't care. It's the 0.01% that really cares. They're going to actually read everything, listen to everything. And I think that book just allows that deep, intimate touch. And something else, just from a funnel perspective, that I loved, and I don't know why I didn't think of it, was when you were like, yeah, you guys can put your QR codes in the chapters. And like, how awesome is that? You just have a QR code, you just snapshot, and now it's like they have access to everything. And then anytime anyone's ordering your book or doing anything, you're collecting an email, right? So once you have that email and you have them in your ecosystem, now funnels all flow from there. Like that's it. Like that's the main goal. And so it's a really nice paid lead magnet, right? The very worst, you pay what it costs you, right? You ask them to pay what it costs you to ship and to print, or however that works. You would know better than me. But yeah, I mean, it's like a paid lead magnet, and yeah, the credibility is awesome. So yeah, I appreciate you breaking that down a little bit, because I do think that it is an underrated piece that's kind of coming back around, because everyone's just really gone hardcore towards digital and social media. And, I think I'm going to actually add to my Instagram, one of the profile headers is, I've told you this, I'm doubling down on human connection in the world of AI. And I think that it goes back to what we spoke about earlier, is we're just human beings. I don't care how much AI you come up with. I don't care if you put our brains in another body. Like, you still have this, unless we can actually change the way our brains work and we're no longer quote unquote human as we know it. You need these things. You need this connection. And I feel like there's a huge correlation with books, thought, depth, and connection, as there is in just being around other humans, cuddling, tribes, all of those things. So I definitely want to keep going old school in a world that's moving super fast in another direction, because I think that if we don't do that and we don't slow down, I think we're going to find ourselves in a world that's a little bit more challenging than it's been, maybe a little bit darker. We see all the
Just
rise.
love.
Yeah, I think that that's a great term. And I don't want to get all dark on this podcast today, but like just the idea of the depression, the anxiety, the suicide, all the things, the loss of purpose, life being so easy. Books are hard. Doing hard things makes you feel good about yourself. And I think that going the old school route, and you see a lot of that shift with, it went from, like, even look at the food industry. It went from McDonald's to like, hey, let's do farm to table, and let's slow down and let's take our time. Let's grow our own crops without pesticides. I think there is a movement that is probably being overshadowed by the speed of AI and all that, but there's a movement to go back to our roots a bit. And I mean, as you said, I mean, how old could books possibly be? I mean, tablets are, cuneiform tablets are 5,000 years old. So we've been doing this for a while, putting our thoughts down on something.
Well, and with that last piece, again, I'm always looking at books from reader, creator. You can't separate them. We create books for the reader, but the transformation of a book impacts both. And one of the things that I still see so many people struggling with is imposter syndrome. No matter how impactful you are in all of these other channels, when you hold your book, when you read your own words in print, you see your name on paper, there is something that happens, and it changes your identity forever. You are an author. You can be an influencer and it's still this temporary thing. It's fleeting, but author becomes part of your identity. You publish one book, you are an author forever. And it's a slow transformation. I did not wake up the next morning, wow, I'm an author. It took me a year for that identity to really seep in, but now I'm a multiple award-winning author. I own that. It is how I wake up in the morning, and that is how I move forward. And I've watched this happen for hundreds of people, and it changes how they show up in the world, and then it changes what they create from there. So that's another piece to just bring to this story. I can't be
It
authors.
just goes back to that like earned clout, like that earned respect. And I remember when I got my black belt, it was just like it was surreal, but it was like nobody can ever take this away from me, no matter what I spent 10 years earning that. And it was, and I'm sure I'll feel the same way when I become, I mean, I guess I am an author now, when I have my own book, so yeah, I love it. I guess I wanted to kind of finish up with the subject that's is a little bit, not unique to you and I, but we've done a lot of work together over the last year. And I've watched you overcome so many limiting beliefs and fears and grow substantially from a fiscal perspective and from a team perspective. And it's just really beautiful to see. I'm very proud of you, of course. But I also want to, I want to just know if you could speak on a little bit about building a mission driven company that feeds your soul, because I think that's what Red Thread is, and being able to not only stay aligned with your core values, because I'm creating something called the core reinvention method, and it's a lot of the work we've already done. I just didn't name it. Yeah. And just how all that kind of comes together, because being an entrepreneur, being an author, you said it yourself, like all the fear comes in. Who am I? Who's going to listen to me? Running a team, I'm the person everyone's looking to now. And then, the challenges we've been facing, which I faced as an entrepreneur, which is like delegating and allowing and trusting, right? And you have this mission driven company that feeds your soul, but you still have to show up as this pinnacle and this leader. And like you said, 6 years ago, you're just like, oh, that cute little girl that was just trying to figure shit out. I'm curious if you can just speak on any of that, because I think it's so powerful for our audience to hear, whether they are an entrepreneur building a business, whether they are a woman trying to share their voice, or whether they're attempting to be an author.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind is a conversation I just had with my daughter. She's 10, and she has this perception of what it means to be an adult. And it's all of the easy stuff that she wants and doesn't feel like she has now, and none of the hard stuff.
Sounds about right for 10, all the way to 20, maybe.
But it also sounds right for all the people who want the thing. They want to run the business. They want to be the author. They want to do this, but they don't want to put in the hours, and they don't want to have the hard conversations, and they don't want to pay taxes, and they don't want to fire and hire people, and they don't want to make SOPs, and they don't want to do the stuff that's sort of behind the scenes, but fundamental to the actual thing. A little context: my daughter moved out yesterday. She put a note on her door and she said, "This is apartment 200. This is the owner. Leave a note on the door if you want to talk to me." Okay. Amazing. I loved this. I told Mark this yesterday. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. She's going to have to cook her own meals. She's going to have to wake herself up. She's going to have to do all the hard stuff. I was really hoping it would last at least a week. It lasted 3 hours. Okay. She had completely, not even 2.5, maybe. And so when we think about calling it mission driven is really important, because then you have to give a damn, and you have to keep giving a damn enough to do the hard stuff, enough to learn the skills that you probably didn't come in with. I absolutely did not come in with these skills. I didn't even come in with the awareness of the skills that I didn't have. Okay. And you've heard this said before: what got you here won't get you there. What's going to get you there isn't going to get you further. And be wildly uncomfortable, and to not know the next thing, but be willing to go figure it out. Be willing to read the books, call in the people who do know, ask for help. Mark's going to smile to himself. He knows this is one of my sticking points. But if you don't know it, you need to find someone who does, and or learn it yourself. This is awful. It's terrible. But if you aren't willing to become someone else then guess what? You're just going to stay exactly who you are. Uh, and again, it doesn't have to happen overnight. Overnight success usually takes about a decade, but it doesn't take a decade of you doing exactly the same shit that you used to do. It's a decade of you striving and learning and struggling and growing and pushing yourself further than you imagined even possible. And that's exactly what it's going to take for my 10-year-old daughter to become the adult. That's it. That doesn't mean it can't happen in 5 years, because it can. It can happen in three. But as sure as shit isn't going to happen if you don't show up today. Today's the only day that you have that's going to get you anywhere. It's the only day you'll ever have. And so thinking about your whole life and the long-term growth that you're trying to create, but what you're willing to do about it today. Can't do anything about it a month from now. I'm only ever going to have today.
Yeah, I think I tell people, I mean, like, this is what you signed up for. And everybody wants the easy part of it. And I look at, like, I've had some relationship situations over my life. And it's like the biggest caveat between a healthy relationship and unhealthy relationship is whether or not the person's willing to commit and work with you. The biggest caveat between getting your book done and not getting it is whether you're willing to sit down and do the hard work that's uncomfortable. And I don't think it's all push hard hustle, like we said. It's that feminine. You got to drop in and enjoy the process. But the real challenge that I see with people is I just think overall the average person just gives up easily. And, I don't love quoting people all the time, but I mean, Alex Hormozy has a really great quote, and he says, this is what hard feels like. And it's a great quote because this is what you signed up for, is what I'd rather say. Like, this is what hard feels like. Kind of feels, I don't love it, but I get it. And I like to use it because it's a little more in depth than what I say, but this is what you signed up for. Like, this is it, day to day, in and out, relationship, book, business. Like, this is what we're here for. And we all go through our moments. Like, you don't have to be perfect. I'm a prime example, and I'll be very vulnerable. I mean, I was broken and frozen for about a year, and that was just what my body needed. I almost looked like, hey, like I suffered a gunshot wound in my leg. Like, that took a long time to heal. And I think about that wound and how big it was. I had like a plug in there, like an old school bathtub with a chain. They had to pull out the plug to get this is a true story. And when I think about that, like, that took a long time, about a year, to really be 100%. So when you look at like life, when life knocks you down and kicks you in the ass, sometimes those wounds take really a long time to heal. I also want to give people grace, because I just don't want everyone getting from this show that it's just, oh, I just got to hustle. I just got to grind. I just got to figure it out. It's always going to be hard. Life is fucking hard. And sometimes you just got to survive and just get through the days and do the things. And so I think that's important for the audience to know as well.
Well, but to weave this back together and to put it back into this context of creation, how much did you learn in that year? You had to slow down to heal, but the book that you're writing now is different than the book you would have written a year ago without any of that, 1,000%. Because I've known you every day of this whole journey in this year. It's not hustle. We're not advocating hustle, but there will be hard times. And I I mean, you and I have done another conversation about the masculine and feminine in creation, because we need both. When you speak about creation, I I call that inspiration, because you need the inspiration to start, and that's the feminine, but you need the masculine to throw down, the intellectual, the logistical, the planning, the revision, the analytical, the dreaming and the drafting are the feminine parts, and then the planning and the revision are the masculine. That is that balance. We need both in order to not just have inspiration and let it stay an idea. In order to take an idea and move it into something tangible, we need the masculine as well. And so one of the things I love about creation is the necessity of both masculine and feminine attributes. I love it.
You just made me think of inspiration plus execution equals creation, and you said the drafting and the dreaming, and then, it's just
You can't
that
make a
balance
baby
and
all
that
by
flow.
yourself. You can't, I can't. So, like, how can you make a business or a book or an anything?
I want to just finish with this, because it's such a beautiful thing, is things are going to be hard. Those hard things will shape you far more than anything that was easy in your life. You know me for a year now, and I am the character and integrity of person I was a year ago. It's crazy. And I didn't even think I could do so much. I really thought I had it figured out a year ago. But to really just put all this together is you 1000% cannot do any of this by yourself. Like you just can't do it. I've had you as a support and multiple friends home here in Medellin, back home in Vegas. And it's just, I just want to end this note is because we have such a beautiful relationship, you and I, from both a working perspective. I'm your client, you're my client, and we're friends. And all we're doing every day is just helping each other. And so, everyone kind of gets out there on the guru and like, oh, invest in yourself. And yeah, and I get why they do it if you want to buy your product in your program. But I just want to take it from a little bit more of a holistic kind of spiritual side is you really need your tribe, man. You need your people that are going to show up for you daily. Just even have a conversation. I got a buddy of mine that lives in Vietnam named Dane, and I just talking to him sometimes. I'm just like, I get off the phone. I'm like, all right, let's go. And you just need that support. So I appreciate you saying that in the end here because that's super powerful. I mean, it's everything. We really are designed to work as a unit. Well, thank you very much. So I have a question. What is next for you
Hmm.
and where can people find you?
I can very much feel that I'm right on the edge of that next iteration. I can always feel it before it happens. I don't know what it will be, but I know it's coming and I know it's bigger than I've ever imagined this next bite will be. It's really exciting. Always have ideas about how to help people write and publish and make impact with their books more fun, easy, etc. So lots of that's coming. We are always found at redthreadbooks.com and Red Thread Books on Instagram. Those are the places we are most likely found.
Awesome. I really appreciate you for sharing. I think it's awesome that we can get vulnerable. This whole show is really about conscious leadership, integrity, character. It's what Evolved Entrepreneur is all about as a whole. And you embody that so well. So I appreciate you sharing. And yeah, thank you.